In the fading glow of the 19th century, when the Wild West still pulsed with the raw essence of untamed freedom and iron horses, those mighty locomotives were just beginning to weave their smoky threads between distant towns and outposts. There lived a solitary cowboy by the name of Sam Coltrane. He was a tall, wiry figure, his frame as lean as the desert winds that shaped it, with a face etched deep by years of relentless sun and storm, and eyes perpetually narrowed in a squint, as if forever peering into the blinding glare of the horizon. Sam wasn't a sheriff upholding the fragile threads of law, nor was he a ruthless bandit preying on the weak. He was simply a cowboy, a wandering soul of the prairies, drifting from one dusty job to the next. One day he'd be herding vast herds of longhorn cattle across endless grasslands, the next guarding stagecoaches rumbling over perilous trails fraught with hidden dangers, and on others still, he'd chase the elusive gleam of gold in rugged mountain streams, his pan dipping into icy waters under the watchful stars. But Sam had a companion whose tales echoed through every dimly lit saloon from the Rio Grande to the Rockies, a chicken named Clara. Clara was no ordinary barnyard fowl scratching in the dirt. She had an uncanny poise, perching on the saddle horn with the steady assurance of a born gunslinger, her feathers catching the wind like a seasoned rider's bandana. Sam had found her years ago in some godforsaken homestead lost to the map, a desolate place where a gang of outlaws had swept through like a prairie fire, slaughtering the livestock in a frenzy of greed and violence, and scattering the terrified owners to the four winds. Amid the chaos of the corral, where the air hung heavy with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the ground was littered with splintered wood, trampled hay, and the lifeless forms of cattle, only this one resilient chicken remained, clucking defiantly in the ruins as if mocking the intruder's folly. With a gentle hand, calloused from reins and ropes, Sam scooped her up and settled her onto the pommel of his saddle. From that fateful moment, they were inseparable, two wanderers bound by the vast, unforgiving frontier. Whispers of Clara's magic spread like wildfire through the saloons, where grizzled prospectors and card sharps gathered over tin cups of rot-gut whiskey. They said she brought unparalleled luck to anyone in her shadow. Sam never lost a duel when Clara was by his side. Her presence seemed to bend fate itself. Bullets had whistled perilously close, a graze along the brim of his Stetson, tearing through the fabric of his weathered duster coat. But they always veered just shy of his vital heart, as if turned aside by some invisible guardian. And in the smoky haze of poker dens, whenever Sam pushed through the batwing doors, hat in hand, and placed Clara regally upon the scarred oak bar, she would survey the gamblers with the imperious gaze of a circuit judge, her beady eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. In those moments, the cards would fall into Sam's calloused hands with uncanny precision, turning bluffs into full houses and straights into royal flushes, leaving opponents slack-jawed and wallets lighter. The day was waning toward evening, the sun dipping low like a blood-orange coin on the edge of the world. A ribbon of dusty road snaked through the sparse landscape, flanked by solitary cactuses standing sentinel like ancient, prickly warriors, their arms raised against the relentless sky. Far ahead, a jagged ridge of blue-gray rocks loomed, promising both shelter and secrets. Sam rode at an easy trot, the rhythm of his horse's hooves kicking up faint clouds of ochre dust that danced in the fading light. In one gloved hand, he loosely held the reins, feeling the subtle pull of the animal's spirit. In the other, he cradled his trusty old Winchester rifle, its barrel etched with the scars of countless skirmishes. Perched steadfastly on the saddle bow, Clara bobbed gently with each step of the horse, her feathers ruffled just so by the warm breeze, as if she were born to this nomadic life. "Well now, old friend," the cowboy murmured, his voice a low rumble honed by wind and solitude. "Up ahead lies the town of Dry Creek. Folks say they're digging for gold there. Veins runnin' rich as sin, but tempers are flaring hotter than a branding iron over who's claiming the big strike. Smells like trouble brewing in that pot." Clara stirred at his words, fluffing her wings with a sudden alertness, and let out a bold, resonant cock-a-doodle-doo that echoed across the empty plain, as if affirming the warning or perhaps challenging the fates themselves. Sam's lips cracked into a wry grin beneath his mustache, his squinting eyes twinkling with shared understanding. Feeling it too, eh? That itch in the air, like lightning before the storm. All right then, stick close to me, partner. We've danced this jig before. Chapter 2. The Last Chance Saloon. Dry Creek welcomed them with the familiar clamor of a frontier boomtown, weathered signs creaking lazily on rusty chains above false-fronted buildings, packs of mangy dogs yipping and nipping at the heels of rumbling freight wagons laden with ore sacks and supplies, and an ever-present pall of cheap whiskey fumes mingling with the dry earth scent. The streets buzzed with the urgency of fortune-seekers, bearded miners in flannel shirts haggling over picks and pans, women in calico dresses calling from boardwalks, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer shaping iron to steel. Sam tethered his horse outside the Last Chance Saloon, its faded sign promising libations and lies in equal measure. He tipped his hat to a passing matron, shouldered through the swinging doors, and the din enveloped him like a living thing. The sharp slap of cards on felt-topped tables, the boisterous guffaws of off-duty shaft diggers swapping yarns of buried treasures, and the slurred, heated debates over nuggets and claims that threatened to erupt into fisticuffs at any provocation. With a practiced motion, Sam doffed his hat, revealing hair matted with trail dust, and stepped inside. Without ceremony, he lifted Clara from the saddlecloth he'd carried her in and set her down on the bar, where she settled with dignified poise amid the rings of spilled liquor. In an instant, the raucous chatter faltered, dying to a murmur as heads turned and eyes widened. "By the devil's own beard," grumbled a burly, bearded prospector with a pickaxe slung over his shoulder, his voice thick with astonishment and a touch of awe. "If it ain't that cowboy and his damn chicken," the one they sing about in Abilene. The barkeep, a grizzled man with a face like cracked leather and a tattooed forearm from his seafaring days, glanced at Clara as if she were a talisman from some ancient rite. Without a word or a demand for coin, he slid a generous tumbler of amber whiskey across the scarred counter to Sam, his nod speaking volumes of respect, or perhaps fear, of the legends that preceded them. But not everyone in the room greeted their arrival with warmth. In the shadowed corner, where the lamplight struggled to reach, 3 rough-hewn men in dust-caked ponchos hunched over a poker game, their faces hardened by outlaw life. They were the enforcers of Rance Doyle, the iron-fisted bandit who gripped Dry Creek in a stranglehold of fear, extorting tribute from every miner and merchant who dared to dream of wealth. One of them, a lanky varmint with a scar twisting his lip into a perpetual sneer, rose slowly, his spurs jingling like a death knell, and sauntered toward the bar with predatory grace. "I've heard tell of you, cowboy," he drawled, his voice oily with menace, eyes flicking to Clara with calculating greed. "They say luck sticks to you tighter than a burr on a wool sock. Reckon it's all on account of that feathered freak show there?" Sam met his gaze steadily, his hand resting easy near his Colt, but not drawing. "Could be," he replied, calm as a still pond, sipping his whiskey without haste. The man's sneer widened into a challenge. "Then let's put it to the test, shall we? Sit in on a hand. If you lose, that chicken stays right here, as a trophy for the house." The saloon plunged into a profound hush, broken only by the scrape of a chair leg and the collective intake of breath from the onlookers, who pressed closer like moths to a flame. Sam turned his head slowly, locking eyes with Clara. She pecked sharply at the bar top, her beak tapping like a judge's gavel as if to say, "Hold your ground, don't flinch." The cards were dealt amid the electric tension, the deck whispering promises and perils. The game unfolded like a slow-burning fuse, bets rising, bluffs called, faces paling under the strain, but Sam played with the cool precision of a man who had stared down worse odds. In the final reveal, he laid down his hand, a royal flush, kings and aces gleaming like captured stars. The crowd erupted in a gasp that rippled through the room like thunder. "Looks like Clara rides with me after all," Sam said, his voice steady, gathering his winnings with unhurried fingers. Chapter 3. Duel at Dawn. The sting of defeat at the card table was a wound that festered deep in outlaw pride. Such humiliations were not suffered lightly. By the witching hour, as the moon hung pale over the rooftops, a furtive messenger slipped Sam a note under the saloon door. Rance Doyle himself demanded satisfaction, a duel at first light, right there on Dry Creek's sun-baked main street, where justice and vengeance often blurred into one.